What ties these three headlines together? The Charlie Kirk assassination, Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Doha, Qatar, and Prime Minister Netanyahu's recent UN speech. I'll tell you what it is. They all expose a vicious second front against Israel. And while Israel has been fighting and winning a 2-year proxy war on the ground along its borders and beyond, a bigger battle has begun snowballing the war of truth versus propaganda. First, let's talk about Charlie Kirk. He spoke loudly for Israel and against terrorism. He was killed for what he said. That's not a debate. That's a bullet at free speech. Charlie Kirk paid with his life. And when words cost a life, truth is under fire. The second thing, Qatar. Israel's strike said, "We see you." Not only the safe haven you continue to provide for Hamas terrorist leaders, also the soft power machine you've created. Money for media megaphones and elite universities that shape young minds against Israel, aligning with the jihadist ideologies. Now, you may not fire rockets, but funding the messaging and the classrooms that excuse terrorism is a battlefield no less dangerous. And third, Netanyahu at the UN. He pushed back hard on the genocide lie and defended the IDF's conduct as a lawful self-defense. Genocide means an intent to destroy a people. Hamas plants weapons, missiles, and terror infrastructure within civilian-dominated spaces. Before strikes, Israel has sent millions of leaflets, text messages, and phone calls telling civilians to evacuate themselves. Now, which country does this with their enemies? On the aid side, Israel has been sending in large volumes of food. Studies based on cross data showing enough to meet roughly 3,000 plus calories per person per day when it gets through. The problem is the UN blocking it from getting in and distribution inside the Gaza Strip. Chaos and looting of warehouses and convoys by Hamas while embedding themselves among civilians. It means that supplies don't always reach families. Now, that's not on Israel. And what is devastating in all of this is the Islamic extremist propaganda war machine keeps churning and growing, making this is no less of an existential threat to Israel and Western values than the proxies in our neighborhood hell-bent on destroying the state of Israel. Today, we're talking about media warfare. Our guest, Brigitte Gabriel, knows and understands this enemy as well as we do. She grew up as a Christian in a war-torn Lebanon under Islamist militias. Years in a tiny bomb shelter, snipers fire outside, explosions above, before her family found refuge within Israel. Brigitte later moved to the US, and since then, she's been a strong voice for Israel, exposing how Islamic extremists use media, money, and campuses to spread hatred and destroy Western freedoms and values. I'm about to sit down with her to map Israel's information war and how we need to fight the enemy on this crucial battlefield. But before we do, please like and subscribe and join the war for truth. So, Brigitte, we're rolling. First of all, thank you for taking the time to meet and talk today.
Glad to be with you.
So how do you look at this recent wave of, let's call it what I call it, the Middle East proxy war that is fought by, let's call it mega countries that are trying to reshape the world that we live in? Who is truly evil? Who is truly good? And how do you go about explaining it?
Golda Meir said a great line. She said, if the Arabs lay down their weapons, we will have peace in the Middle East. But if the Jews lay down their weapons, there will be no longer Israel.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. In 1964, when the PLO was founded, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Gaza was in the hands of Egypt, and the West Bank was in the hands of Jordan.
Yeah.
It was Jordan and Egypt. Israel did not capture the territory from any Palestinian state. Israel captured the territory in 1967 from Jordan and from Egypt. So why in 1964, 3 years before the 1967 war, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, what were they trying to liberate? There was no occupied territory. They were trying to take over, to basically get rid of Israel in the Middle East. They could not tolerate an Israeli state in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So And that was in 1964. So today, when you look at this war between Israel and the Palestinians, this war between Israel and the Palestinians is basically a war between a very radical Middle East trying to either kill or expel the Jews. And right now, the Palestinians have been trying to do this, and the Arabic countries have used the Palestinians as pawns to keep them distracted with Israel so they can stay off of the Arab land. Because we have seen what the Palestinians do when they go to other Arabic countries. We've seen what they've done in Kuwait. We've seen what they've done in Jordan. We've seen what they've done in Lebanon, the country in which I was born into. So this is why Israel has to explain the history. The problem, people are misjudging this war is because they do not understand history, and Israel failed miserably in the PR department, while the Palestinians have been able to rewrite history.
You've been doing diplomacy on behalf of Israel and the West for a lifetime. If it was in your hands, and it is to a certain degree, what would you change tomorrow in explaining the messages of what's really happening here? Because the disconnect between what's really happening on the ground and what people are believing about what's happening has never been greater. Accusations of intentional starvation, Israel is the one delivering goods. Accusations of genocide, Israel is the one evacuating civilians. So what would you do tomorrow to change the way people perceive what's happening here?
We live in a social media world. We live in a video world. Israel has an idea that if we put generals out to explain the facts, military analysts with heavy accents who get on television and talk about UN Resolution 242, Article 1 and 2. That has no emotions. The Palestinians put women on television who are fluent in English, who are talking about a little old lady stopped at a checkpoint or a mother breastfeeding a baby stopped at a checkpoint for 8 hours burning in the sun. You cannot picture UN Resolution 242, Article 1 and 2. The Palestinians are willing to put it out as a marketing campaign and rewrite the history while we stay silent. And this is how Israel needs to change its PR when it puts information out to the world.
The headline is Qatar. I think people are finally waking up to the question of how involved are the Qataris in U.S. politics, in U.S. academy, in reshaping media. We keep ignoring the fact that Qatar is the machine that's behind this. They're funding this left and right, and people seem to ignore that. I'd be interested to hear your take on that, on how involved they are and how intricate their engagement in U.S. society is.
Well, this is a great question because this is something I have been dealing with since I started my organization in 2002. And I started traveling and I started speaking on college campuses. And in my first book, Because They Hate, I detail all the funding that was coming from the Middle East into our universities, setting up Middle East study department, a political science department, and appointing Arab professors who are anti-Israel and anti-America, who were teaching that Israel is evil, America is bad, and the Islamic world is the underdog. So we have seen that money starting to pour from the Middle East into the United States, not just from Qatar. I mean, this was from Saudi Arabia, especially with the oil wealth in the Middle East, Kuwait, Bahrain, and sending students from the Middle East to study in the United States. But the biggest problem on college campus was not Islamic funding. It was leftist Jewish groups who were supporting the socialist Marxist uprising in the United States. The ADL went after me, the Anti-Defamation League, in 2010, and they made sure I was silenced from speaking on any college campus because they accused me of offending the Palestinians. In 2004, I spoke at Duke University, 2004. The Jewish community, because I spoke about Palestinian terrorism, on the eve of the Palestinian Solidarity Conference, the Jewish community in Duke University issued a letter of apology to the Palestinians for me offending them. So the Jewish people who were on the leftist side in the United States, which is 80% of the Jewish community, was the driving factor behind we don't want to create waves, we are all multicultural, we want to support the blacks, we want to support the Muslims, we want to support the Muslim student associations, we want to stand shoulder to shoulder with them, we're going to have hummus dinners to show how much we are alike. And it backfired on the Jewish community in the United States. And that's the sad reality that nobody wants to talk about.
Life here in Israel hasn't just been about physical recovery. It's about people trying to rebuild from the ground up. So many hardworking Israelis, bakers, artisans, small shop owners had their lives turned upside down. Some were called to reserve duty, others had to leave their homes, many lost months of income almost overnight. And now they're trying to start again, to reopen their businesses, to restock shelves, to get back to doing what they love. But it's not easy, guys. They need help. And that's why Arta exists. Arta partners directly with these small businesses, buying their handmade goods and delivering them in beautiful boxes to homes around the world. Each box helps real families get back on their feet. It puts money in the hands of those working hard to recover with dignity, not charity. Now, if you want to be part of that effort, go to www.artsabox.com/TBNIL and use the code TBNIL to get 10% off your next subscription. Again, that's Artzabox, ARTZABOX.com/TBNIL. One box, one family, one step closer to rebuilding Israel.
One, I'd ask you two questions. One, why you think they did that in the early 2000s? And two, after everything we've experienced with the Iranians, the Palestinians, and in the last, let's say, decade, is that still the case today?
This is a problem. This is a problem when you cannot identify the enemy because you are afraid to offend your enemy. And this is the situation right now. Now, they're better since October 7th, because since October 7th, the Jewish community that funded all these halls at universities, that funded all these campuses by donating the $25 million whatever center to this university and that university, they are waking up to saying our own children are afraid to walk through campus to study in the buildings that we built because they are now being attacked by the Muslim Student Association. They are starting to wake up on the Israel issue, but we have a long way to go.
Even Israeli society 30 years ago was much more leftist than it is today because there was a naive belief that we could reach peace with our neighbors. And it was proven to be untrue, sadly, by multiple waves of terrorism that I grew up in and had to live through, as did other Israelis. But let's go back to where we are today. So we understand that the Iranians are deceitful. We understand that the Qataris play every possible side of the chessboard. But what about the West? How is it that people are so deceived about what's truly happening? Where is the choice to believe the false facts coming from?
There's a saying, when you repeat a lie long enough, the lie becomes truth. You know, deception is part of the Islamic faith. There's a law of taqiyya in Islam. And the law of taqiyya says that you can lie, you can deceive, you can even place your hand on the Quran and swear you're telling the truth, but knowing that you are telling a lie in order to advance the cause. So it's a part of the war tactics in Islam. Prophet Muhammad signed a 10-year peace treaty with the Meccans, telling them, okay, we surrender, we're not going to fight you, we're going to work towards peace. Prophet Muhammad broke the treaty within 2 years. He used the time to build his military, to rearm, to re-strengthen, and then attacked the Meccans when they were least expecting it. 2 years later, Mecca fell within 24 hours. And that became the principle of war in Islam. Deceive your enemy. Lie to buy yourself time. That's why no matter what the Iranians sign, whatever deal, whatever peace, whatever, it doesn't mean anything. Their signature on paper means nothing. And Yasser Arafat used that law in the Oslo Accord when he convinced Israel that, oh, we're going to have peace. And, everybody was excited. Finally, there's going to be peace. The Palestinian Authority, they're going to get their act together. Yasser Arafat, when he signed the Oslo Accord, people in the Arabic world, and the Arabic press, journalists would ask him, how could you sign a peace treaty with Israel? And he would say to them in Arabic, obviously he's giving interviews to the Arabic world, remember al-Hudaybiyah. That's all he had to say.
We know that the religion allows them to lie. We know that it allows them to deceive. And I say, even about myself, before October 7th, 2023, we allowed ourselves to be deceived. We knew that they were saying across the board, we will kill them when we have a chance. We understand what they're saying. We understood also in the past. We're choosing to believe a lie. I think one of the big fallacies in the way the West looks at people like the Hamas is they continuously, even after October 7th, try to impose on them a solution that is applicable to a Western player, country, entity, but not applicable to a genocidal, radical Islamic organization. And they try to say, well, just give them this and give them that and appease them here and appease them there. And it never, ever, ever works.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and at the same time, because of the inherent anti-Israel and anti-Semitic rhetoric and mindset that exists, we're stuck in never getting to a negotiation that's actually practical, because we're negotiating with Hamas. What's the point of that?
You can't negotiate with terrorists. And you know, another point that's important to make. Christians and Jews are not in the business of lying to tell out the facts about the war. We did the same thing in Lebanon. So in Lebanon, when the Palestinians started massacring the Christians, and the cameras would come to interview the Christians, you know, were not wailing, beating their chest, laying on the floor, coming up with all sorts of lies. They were dignified. They thought, I'm not going to talk about it. They stayed silent. While the Palestinians in Lebanon wrote the history of that war. We think that if we speak the facts, the world is going to see the truth. The world is going to see what's happening. So we fall the same victims because we as Christians and Jews reflect our values on evil people. The problem with Western nations outside of the Middle East is they really don't understand what we're dealing with. You and I understand that we are dealing with a barbaric enemy that is willing to send their own children to die and celebrate their death in order to kill you and me. In the West, they cannot fathom that. They say, no. Everybody's made the same. Everybody wants to live in peace. Everybody just wants to work, make a living. If they're not oppressed, they'll be fine. You and I know that that's not the truth.
On an information level, what do you tell people that are so far away from what's actually truthful? How do you inch them towards the truth, into an understanding of the way the world actually operates?
Well, we need to start by basically controlling the radical left on the Jewish side, who's basically on the side of the enemy. Because they feel that if they silence people like me and conservatives speaking in defense of Israel, their enemy is going to say, oh, you're tolerant. Okay, we can work with you. We understand. Not all Jews are bad. The way we fix it is informational, by putting messages where Israel goes on the offense, not the defense. As long as you're trying to defend yourself, you know, you're going to be playing catch up. Thankfully, we've got President Trump in office right now. Israel has an administration in America that will stand with Israel, that will support Israel. The problem are the people who are putting shackles around Netanyahu and Trump's ankles. Look, you and I know, if Kamala Harris won the election instead of President Trump, do you think the United States would have bombed the nuclear reactor in Iran? Of course not. As long as we have President Trump in office, and hopefully, even after he leaves office, we will be able to continue another conservative administration, because we need the time. We need about 8 years of a strong leadership in America that stands on the side of Israel, to change the educational system in Gaza, change the educational system with the Palestinians, enforce sanctions and laws that say, if you will continue teaching this level of education, we're not going to support you. You're not going to get a dime from American funding. Palestinian Authority, United Nations, UNRWA, whatever it is. And look what President Trump did. He cut off all the funding for UNRWA and all these international world organizations that we don't agree with.
So I want to tell you a story. A while back, myself and some members of our team, we traveled into Lebanon to see one of the Hezbollah terror tunnels during this war. And the terror tunnel was it was close enough to throw a rock from the nearest UN post. That's how close it was. And the UN, of course, no, we never knew, we never saw. Literally, they built a cave system. It was basalt, which is a very, very hard bedrock. You need explosives and you need machinery to dig it out. And you look at this and you say, we're at this tipping point here in the Middle East where we're able to reshape the power balance and really force a pro-US, pro-Israel agenda on these countries, or we're about to lose a lot of these countries to radical Islam and to the influence of the Iranians, the Russians, and the Chinese. And my sense is people around the world don't understand how close we're calling it.
I agree with you. As long as we have the mullahs there, we have a problem. To your point about what's happening in South Lebanon, look, I come from Marjayoun. I grew up in Marjayoun. So the UN trucks and the UN helicopters would be flying, and literally Hezbollah would be transporting weapons while they're watching it and not doing anything about it. And we would sit in Marjayoun watching this charade where the UN peacekeepers are supposed to keep the peace, and watching them allow Hezbollah to smuggle weapons from the Bekaa Valley, take them to Pintish Bale, literally under their sight, and do nothing about it. And this was happening 45 years ago. My organization, Act for America, actforamerica.org, for those of you who are watching and you want to check us out, have lobbied our government to cut funding to the United Nations. The United Nations is a world body of organizations that we should not be giving a dime to from American dollars, because we do not trust them, they squander our money, and they vote against us 97% of the time.
I know people that are distributing aid inside the Gaza Strip, and I've heard from them behind closed doors, they openly say, if in any way, this benefits the state of Israel, we'd rather the food isn't distributed at all in the Gaza Strip. And the only way the IDF and the Israeli government can get them to distribute aid is by publicly shaming them and sending aerial photographs of, here is the food waiting to be distributed, here are the UN trucks parked next to it, and they refuse to give out the food. They've publicly made a choice not only to not help in distributing aid, but also to threaten other organizations and say, if you ever distribute aid that is provided by the state of Israel, we'll never work with you again anywhere in the world. But I want to ask you a personal question as we're wrapping this interview up. You've been doing this for decades, and it is an uphill battle if there ever was one. Where do you find the hope and the energy and the optimism to do that day after day?
I do it to honor my parents. I adore my parents. I'm an only child. My parents died within 9 months of each other. I became an orphan at 22 years old. To honor my parents, I buried them on Mount Zion. My parents are buried with Oskar Schindler on Mount Zion. My parents taught me one thing: actions speak louder than words. You have to fight evil, you have to stand up for the truth, and don't just speak it with words. You need to show people how you feel with your actions. And I do it because if good people do nothing, evil dwells. And I hope I can inspire enough good people to stand up. I know I'm standing on the right side of history, and that's exactly what my parents would want me to do.
One, that is the best answer I've heard in a really long time. Two, from where I'm sitting right now, we can see that exact spot. Literally. Oskar Schindler's grave is right over there, right behind me. Brigitte, I want to say thank you for taking the time to do this, but more importantly, and I think this is really the important part, for standing up for truth and what's right in the world over time. There's no hidden agenda, there's no bias, there's no country paying you off. You're doing this because it's the right thing to do, because the truth needs to be spoken. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for speaking up for what's right.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be with you. Thank you.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.